Samuelson. I'm a representative for the Bethlehem area. So Bethlehem North Side, Bethlehem South Side, and Hanover Township is in this legislative district. I have an office in downtown Bethlehem at Broad and Center Streets. Out in Harrisburg, I'm the chairperson of the Finance Committee in the House of Representatives. Just got reappointed for another 2 years to be chair of the Finance Committee. So this is a wonderful program, and I know Brett and Andrea are going to talk about this. The funding is available this year. I think it was maybe 500,000 last year, and this year maybe 850,000. But it goes fast. Apparently, in the first 3 months last year, the funding was utilized, but we did have some successful projects here in the Lehigh Valley. This is a funding that is federal from the Small Business Administration, and it's for small to mid-sized companies to expand their exports. And that could be many different things. There's a whole category that I'm sure Brett and Andrea are going to go over. Could be for testing, could be to update your website, be to go to a trade show. Some could even be for a marketing trip in certain cases. A lot of online stuff that if you're trying to get the word out about your business to a worldwide audience. So I think there's about 7 official categories, but obviously the Lehigh Small Business Development Center. And I have to just say one more thing. We are very fortunate that they are here. There's only 14 small business development centers in the whole state, and we have one right here based at Lehigh University. So I know some of the companies on the call have reached out to the Small Business Development Center for assistance with this and many other programs. For purposes of this program, the Lehigh Small Business Development Center is the point of contact to apply for this program. You do apply to the Department of Community Economic Development in Harrisburg, but the Small Business Development Center is the REN, the Regional Export Network. They're the ones who will help you with your application, submit your application, make sure that what you're applying for is an acceptable category of funding. And I know the amount is maybe $10,000, up to $10,000, but that can be very helpful as you're updating your website, as you're planning how to expand your exports. I, of course, as a local representative, will be glad to write letters of support if your company is applying. My office, I know Cheryl Baker is on the phone call from my office. She would help us write a letter of support so that your application could get a little bit of extra attention. But I know the folks at Brett and Andrea, they are the A team in terms of helping you apply for this funding. So thank you very much for having me on this call. I'll turn it back over to Brett.
All right. Thank you, Representative Samuelson. We appreciate you being able to join us and for your continued support of both the REN program and the SBDC program. Joining me this morning is Andrea Hampton, who, like I said, is our program director for the Lehigh Export Network, which is the regional office for the REN here, covering Lehigh and Northampton counties. So before I start going into her presentation, Andrea, if you want to go ahead.
Yes, good morning. Thank you. So just for the sake of introducing myself for maybe the 4th or 5th time today, my name is Andrea Hampton. I am the International Trade Program Director at the Lehigh University Small Business Development Center and the point of contact for the Lehigh Export Network. You will see me holding my mic through the presentation because if not, for some reason, you will not be able to hear me, so I apologize. So you've heard a lot of names at this point of things, of programs. Let's talk a little bit about what the program actually is, who we are, and then I'll dive into the Global Access Program. The Lehigh Export Network is one of 10 regional export networks here in Pennsylvania. So you can see the map there, and we're right here, the Lehigh Valley. We cover Lehigh and Northampton counties, and this is a partnership with the Pennsylvania Office of International Business Development. Through this partnership, we are able to offer in-country services in 44 markets through 13 offices. So there's a list. I'm not going to go through them. But if you ever were looking to do business in any of those countries, please feel free to contact me and I can put you in touch with the reps, and I will talk a little bit more about the services that they provide. The state also entered into a partnership with the Conference of Great Lakes and St. Lawrence Governors and Premiers. So this is a multi-market initiative. It is geared toward more experienced exporters So if you're already exporting and you were maybe looking for a distributor in one of these additional markets, we would be able to provide that. It's important to note that our services are confidential and have no cost. So let's talk a little bit about what our services actually are. What are the things that we can do in these countries? We can assist with doing market research. We also put together international trade trainings. We get a lot of questions about international compliance and how to build, your export strategy. So we have continuous trainings to make sure that we are giving that information. We can also do foreign company background checks. This one is one of the most popular services we have. And I always like to tell the story. We had a client a couple of years ago who was offered a $5 million deal. And thankfully he asked us to do a foreign company background check. And it turned out that it was a ghost company. They were just trying to get him to ship the product without really having any financial backup to pay for it. So I'd like to think that our services helped avoid, what could have been a horror story. So always encourage our clients, whether it is a potential partner or a big client, to let us do the background checks. We can also assist with agent and distributor searches abroad. We can help with in-country regulatory information. This is not a full list. There are other services that we can do, and certain of the abroad offices also have specific services. So for example, our Chinese office is able to help with auditing the social media in China on the Pennsylvania company's behalf, because there are platforms that you are not able to access unless you are physically in China. And then we also help manage the Global Access Program, which is what brings us all here today. So the Global Access Program is a grant, and I will get into the specifics of the grant, but let's first talk about who can apply. So it is geared for small and medium businesses. The Small Business Administration is the one who decides if your company falls into that category. So there is a tool, and if you're interested, I can send the link on how to look, but it will be basically based on your industry and your NAICS code. So it might be based off your yearly revenue or the number of employees that you have. I should add too, this is geared for-profit businesses. The business does need to be registered in Pennsylvania and, produce, assemble, distribute a product, or provide an exportable service. The company does need to be in good standing with the Pennsylvania Department of Revenue and the IRS. You must have been in business for a minimum of 1 year as of the date when you request the assistance to apply for the grant. Of course, you should have sufficient resources to bear the cost associated with exporting. The idea is not to fund, grants that are not going to lead somewhere. And then we also ask that you agree to provide your export sales figures. This does help us justify our program. It helps us show that there is a real return on the investment. But your confidentiality is not breached. Those numbers do get reported in the aggregate. So what are some of the eligible expenses? You can use GAP funds to attend a trade show or a trade mission. We see this often with international shows. However, if it is a US show with a big international component, we can also do that. So for example, in New York, you have the Fancy Food Show, and that is a huge international show. GAP funds would be eligible to be used toward that. You can also use it for compliance testing to enter markets abroad. You can use it to optimize your website for international commerce. You can use it for e-commerce. Again, all of these activities must be geared toward international trade. You can use it to cover the fees of the U.S. Commercial Services as well. So they are our federal counterpart, and they do cover a broader variety of markets just because of the nature of their programs. But their services do have a cost. So if you decided to go with one of their services in a country that we don't cover, you could apply for GAP to cover for those costs. You can use it for international travel. Maybe you're going out there to meet a potential distributor or a potential client. However, it only covers up to 2 company officers. You can also use it for intellectual property protection, again, international, to cover the cost of credit insurance policy fees and for interpreter fees. Now, there are also quite a few ineligible expenses. I'm not going to go through all of them just because there are so many. The ones we mostly get asked about is the airfare, baggage fees, and meals. You will not be able to use Global Access Program funds for that. So here are some notes about applying and more specifics about the program. So the process would be, you would reach out to our office if you are located in Lehigh and Northampton County. So you would talk to me, I would submit the forms, and you should have the forms back to me at least 45 days before the start of the activity. GAP is a reimbursement grant. That means you incur the expense and you get refunded up to 75% of eligible expenses once the expense has been incurred. So for example, you go on a trip January 1st, you come back on the 15th, you have until mid-February to submit the reimbursement packet. You may apply for the grant for up to 2 activities a year. So it could be a trade show and compliance testing, or maybe 2 trade shows. However, the total cannot exceed 10,000 per year. So, you could use 8,000 on the first trip and 2,000 on the second one, if that's kind of how it works out. To apply, you will need a Pennsylvania vendor number and a UEI number. If you're already doing business with the government, typically you already have those. If you have received other grants, you typically will have at least one of those numbers, but if you need assistance, I can absolutely help with resources on how to apply for them. You can also use funds only to participate in the same event a maximum of 3 times. So there are, and I'm thinking of specifically Medica, that's a very big medical device trade show that happens in Germany every year. So say you went 2020, 2021, 2022, you would no longer be eligible to apply for GAP to go back to Medica, but you could use it for a different activity. And then if you've already received funds in the past, you do need to have an export sales confirmation form on file. Remember how I said a little bit ago, we will ask that you report those numbers. We'll have to make sure that you actually reported them before we can process a new application. A note here, while I get the forms and I review and make sure that the activity makes sense, that you qualify, that that everything is complete, I don't make the ultimate decision on whether or not you get funded. So I'm just throwing that out there. So as Representative Samuelson said at the beginning, funds tend to go really quickly. The program year goes from October 1st until September 30th. And last year, by mid-December, so it had started October 1st, and by mid-December, all funds had been allocated. In an effort to keep that from happening, we're trying something new this year. The application will be in phases. So phase 1 already finished. That said, if you do have any activities planned from, March through September, the application period opens up again on January 13th. So this is a very good time for you to start planning if you haven't done so already. The activities that you may want to participate in next year. It's also a really good time if you are interested to let us know so that I can provide the forms and answer any questions so that hopefully by the time January 13th rolls around, your application is ready to be submitted. So the reimbursement process, if your application gets approved, you will get a reimbursement packet with it. Once you complete the activity, you have 30 days to submit that to us. Please do note that you will need individual receipts with proof of payment for everything that you're claiming on your reimbursement. So you stayed at a hotel, you get a hotel bill. At the end, it has to say zero due and paid with a credit card or paid with a bank transfer, however it is that you made that payment. If you have receipts in foreign currency, we do need a screenshot from oanda.com that has to be attached to each individual receipt. What is nice about this converter is it allows you to pick the date specifically. And so it needs to match the date on the receipt. If you are asking for reimbursement for lodging, there is a maximum reimbursable lodging rate. So we also need a screenshot for that for every city. And you do need to submit your post-activity survey. With that, I think I covered all the basics of the program. Here is my contact information. And I believe we will be sharing the slides after today's webinar. So with that, I will take questions.
I think everybody should be able to unmute themselves if they want to. Or if you have questions, oh wait, no, we're doing this with webinar, so we can't. So if you have questions, feel free to use the chat box, or you can use the raise hand feature and we can open up the mic. But yes, we will be sending out the slides as well as the recording from today's event, so you can go back through and check out the information and be able to click on all the links in there. I also did send a link to the SBA size standards tool. So if you have, typically for the SBA, it's under 500 employees or 15 million in annual revenue, depending on your industry. So the vast majority of businesses that we work with should be able to qualify. Let's see. Andrea, are there any particular industries that are considered over others?
No, so it's open to all the industries. Again, you just need to be for profit and make sure that your product or service are exportable. And I also see that Krista, who's our liaison with the state, is letting us know that we can also consider February events as long as we receive your application before the activity.
And there's also a message from Cheryl with Representative Samuelson's office. So if you have other questions or need support as well through their office, you're more than welcome to reach out to them. And thank you to both Cheryl and Glory for putting this, helping us put this event together, along with Representative Samuelson.
Thank you. Can you hear me?
Yep.
Mm-hmm. And so, yes, and the folks at the Pennsylvania Department of Community and Economic Development out in Harrisburg would also be willing to help in any way. We have Jennifer Black, who's the executive director of the International Business Office, and also the Deputy Secretary, David Brile. They've offered to give us any information we need or provide any information. But the best place you can go is right here, the Lehigh University Small Business Development Center. For our two counties, Lehigh and Northampton County, Andrea and Brett, they're the ones who can help you put together the application and help you get funding. Make sure it's submitted correctly and on time, and we appreciate your expertise and thank you for all of that information you gave us, Andrea.
Thank you. And then Andrea, there was